everyone, it's Chloe Archer here again with a quick update on some news going on with me before I get into this month's interview. So first and foremost, my next book, The Gargoyle and the Romance Writer, which is the second full-length novel in my Monsters Hollow series, comes out April 30th. This is Vash and Ryder's story, and I hope you're all going to enjoy it. Also, the audiobook for The Orc and the Manny, which is being produced by Podium Audio and narrated by the always amazing Greg Boudreau, will be coming out May 28th, and the pre-order is currently available on Audible. I will put links in the show notes. And then lastly, if you happen to be in the northern Iowa area, I am going to be at the North Iowa Book Bash on May 4th at the Black Diamond Joe Casino for a book signing. I'd love to see you there. Please swing on by if you can. Otherwise, without further ado, on to the show. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tea, Tentacles, and Talk, cozy conversations about LGBTQ plus romance. I'm your host, Chloe Archer, and today I have a wonderful guest with me. I am sitting down and talking with Gregory Ashe. Gregory Ashe is a longtime Midwesterner. He has lived in Chicago, Bloomington, Indiana, and St. Louis, his current home. When not reading and writing, he is an educator. Welcome to the show, Gregory.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It really is. I would love to sort of start off by talking a little bit about what got you interested in writing more broadly, but like
Mhm.
LGBTQ mystery more specifically.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, I think for a lot of, we were talking about this before the show started about how for a lot of queer kids, books are a safe place. And
Right.
that was certainly true for me growing up, even though I think that wasn't something, not think, I mean, it wasn't something I could even articulate to myself. I grew up in a very religious home and
Mhm.
was very like I was as about as deep in the closet as you can get. And so, I wrote, for most of my life, and it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started taking it seriously. And that kind of not coincidentally lined up with when I was also working on a lot of those issues about coming out and dealing
Mhm.
with the fallout from that. And yeah, so I mean, I think I've always enjoyed crime fiction, but writing about LGBTQ characters became a natural outgrowth of what was going on in my life as well.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, is that true for you? You mentioned like tell me, what was it like for you, or what brought you write. I see more romances on your
Yeah, I
catalog,
tend to
but
do mostly like rom-com, so
yeah,
the sci-fi and paranormal variety
yeah.
to be my kind of. I tend to do lighter, but I'm a huge mystery reader. I just tend to be. I lean more toward the pantser end of the spectrum, and I don't
Oh
know that
yeah,
I could do a mystery effectively enough because it involves, in my mind, a bit more planning and knowing things to be able to like lay breadcrumbs and just, all of that kind of stuff
yeah.
that I know that's not my strength, but I enjoy reading them. I mean, I grew up with Sherlock Holmes in
Oh
particular
yeah.
when I read the books, but also my grandmother and I used to watch the old like Basil
Oh
Rathbone,
yeah.
Nigel Bruce like films from when she was young, and then later
Yeah.
my aunt and I would watch the Jeremy Brett
Hmm.
versions and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I've always been a fan of mystery. I've not really tried to write it yet. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no, for me, I think, partly just being a queer person who grew up reading when it came to romance, primarily het romance, because that's kind of
Hmm.
all that was out there.
Hmm.
Later in the 90s, like I did discover some like lesbian romance published by Naiad Press, like the old Radcliffe books and stuff like that. And some
Hmm.
like pulp novels from like the
Yeah.
50s and 60s and things along those lines, but they tended to have like less happy endings. They wouldn't be an
Yeah.
APA kind of romance as we understand it today. And then I actually kind of discovered queer manga when I lived in Japan for a while. So boys love and girls love kind of manga there. And that kind of got me started. And then eventually discovered, oh my gosh, people are writing novels now
Hmm.
and,
Yeah.
self-publishing and all. And there were some small indie presses that were releasing stuff, a lot of which have since gone under, but,
Yeah.
the very
Yeah.
early 2000s, right? And actually, one of the first ones I stumbled across was Josh Lanyon's Adrian
Hmm.
English series,
Oh, they're
which
so
was
good.
great
Yeah.
romantic mystery. And
Yeah.
so really enjoyed that. And I am a fan of like also I okay, so one of my like total favorite tropes is like two people who end up having to be partnered together in some kind of activity, which is why I really enjoyed your Hazard and Somerset
Oh,
series
thank you.
because I love that dynamic, and of course when there's like tension between them, and like I have to admit, like, so I'm going off on a major tangent here, but like
No, that's
in
great.
general, I am not big on like bully type, like returning to a character who was a bully in the past,
Hmm.
just because as somebody who was bullied in their youth, like the subgenre of bully romance, I for me, I just can't understand it because I have too much personal experience with that kind of thing. But I thought you were so skillful in how you made that work in this narrative of
Oh,
like,
thank you.
really trying to um be able to get past that
Hmm.
trauma and to
Hmm.
like, for both of them essentially.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have to give you kudos for that. So I'm just gonna be a fangirl and kind of,
No, that's very kind. It's one of those things that I mean, I'll admit that I am not a romance reader really, and so I
Mhm.
didn't even really know that bully romances were a thing. Like I wrote that
Right.
book because I was so interested in the characters when I started kind of thinking
Yeah.
about them, and so
Mhm.
um, I think if I were to, you know, I couldn't probably write that book the same way now because I've read so
Mm.
much more
Right.
in romance and I've seen I kind of my head is full of things that it wasn't full of before. But
Right.
yeah, so it's kind of interesting that that's a genre that I don't know if it really I don't know if it fits into it super well, but it's not certainly something I had in mind when I was writing it. And so
Yeah. No, and I don't think it goes in that direction. And obviously that series kind of came out before bully romance kind of, I mean,
right.
it became a sort of subcategory or, whatever, but that kind of second chance with
Hmm.
somebody who was a bully.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen that in some other narratives, but I find it really hard to make me not hate that character,
Right. Yeah,
not to
absolutely.
like forgive them.
Yeah.
And I really don't like the narratives where they don't have to work that hard
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
regain like the respect and all of that. And so I feel like you handled that really well. So
Oh, thanks.
yeah, yeah. But speaking of which, so you primarily write sort of more mystery, although you have like that. I haven't read all of it yet, but the is it like the Hollow, the
Hmm.
YA, more of a
Hmm.
YA kind of like almost, I don't know if I would call it like gothic paranormal, maybe.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like it's certainly paranormal.
Yeah.
It's like kind of that weird small town, kind of creepy small town
Mm.
vibe, which
Hmm.
is the gothic, has some gothic elements. So yeah,
Yeah.
I have that. I have a paranormal horror-ish series set in New Orleans, and then I have kind of some backlist books that aren't up for sale anymore that were more in the fantasy, kind of more firmly in fantasy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's really where I started was I just grew up loving epic fantasy
So did
and
I. That was my gateway
yeah,
drug. It was my
same. Yeah. And I just, I don't know why, but it never was the genre that clicked for me writing,
Mm,
but I still, I guess should say I don't read a ton of it anymore, but I'm always hoping that I'll find another series like that that'll really kind of, like Game of Thrones was probably the last one that I really fell in love with. Um,
right.
but yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know you write fantastical,
Yes.
creatures, right? But it doesn't sound
That's more
like
like
they're
cozy
fantasy.
monster. No, not
Yeah.
no. I mean, I definitely have aspirations to write an epic fantasy someday. And
Oh,
some
very
ideas,
cool.
but
Yeah.
because I do feel like we need still more
Yeah.
queer epic fantasy. I
Yeah,
think
we do.
more than there used to be. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
probably still one of my all-time favorite fantasy series is Lynn Llewellyn's Night Runner
Yes.
series,
It's wonderful.
which was
Yeah.
like the first openly queer one I ever
Yeah.
read. And I was like, oh, and then, and there's some Mercedes Lackey and some stuff that where you've got
Hmm.
some bisexual characters and stuff like that too. And, but,
Yeah.
a lot of the times it's really hetero and sometimes very heterosexist, which I'm not so
Yeah.
big a fan of.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but I mean, I discovered it was like fourth grade, and I discovered Terry Brooks's The Sword of Shannara in a
Oh,
book.
I love, yeah,
And like
absolutely.
my dad would always buy me one book anytime we went into a bookstore. And he's
Oh,
like,
I
Are you
love it.
sure you want this? Because there's like
They're
800
huge.
pages, right?
Yeah.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
the cover looks cool and the
Yeah.
description sounds interesting.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was like, because I actually did not, this is where I'm kind of weird. I never really liked YA books, even when I was a young adult. Like, I
Uh-huh.
didn't like books for kids when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I found them kind of boring. And so, anyway, I picked up this book and it was life changing.
Yeah.
I got sucked in and I did nothing but read this book for like
Yeah.
days. And then I had to get all the others. And then, then I was creating my own stories in my head and
Yeah.
trying to get my friends in the neighborhood, like, we're going to go on an epic fantasy quest together.
Oh, I
They're like,
love
what are you talking about?
it. That's
So yes,
amazing.
I think that for like many authors, I do
Yeah.
think for folks I've talked to, epic fantasy is one of those gateway like
Yeah.
transitions to sort of not only loving reading, but like wanting to
Hmm.
create your own worlds, your own
Yeah.
stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so someday, I mean, I have aspirations. But I right now I'm like my editor tells me you can't plan anything. We've got through 2025 planned out.
Oh my, you
Yes,
are booked.
yes. I
Okay.
am fully booked. Well, and like I don't know if you're familiar with like the Clifton strengths for
Hmm.
folks, but my number one is futuristic. So I actually have
Hmm.
like basically the next 5 to 10 years kind of loosely
Oh
out, right?
wow.
Because I think
Yeah.
that far ahead. But I'm gonna like circle all the way back because we were talking about some of your series and stuff, and I have wondered for a while, like, how are you so prolific?
Oh
Because you
gosh.
still have a day job, I've got a day
Hmm.
job, and I always love
Hmm.
to talk to authors and kind of think about like, how do you make time for writing? Because it is a challenge,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I write in the morning. I get up at 5 every
Mm,
morning and I write until I have to go to work. And
yeah.
so I think, it's been great. Like I really consider writing kind of like a practice. And so
Mm,
it's like cathartic and it's like
yes.
enriching and it drives me crazy and makes me furious. And but I do really find that to be like I wanted to start bringing my best self and my best energy to that. And that meant
Mm,
doing it before I was tired and before I
right.
was, I think it's as a film person, you probably know this better than I did. Oh gosh. Um, the director's name is going to come to me, but he said he always worked in the morning before anyone could hurt him. And I think there's something to that, like that there's something to that state before the world has kind of invaded
Right.
you, right? And
Mhm.
so, oh gosh, I think it was Francis Ford Coppola, and
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I feel like that's who it was.
Mm,
But I'll have to dig around for it and see if I can find it. Anyway, but just this idea that, and I'm not even a morning person by
right.
nature,
Yeah.
but I just, as you know, when you come home at the end of the day, it can be hard
Yeah.
to muster up
It really can.
enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've tried to be very diligent about that. And, I think that's probably really that's the only secret. The other secret is I just don't have a life. I mean, I have a very quiet, comfortable life, and I have a great partner who is very supportive of all of
Mhm.
this. And
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah, when he says, can we go do something? Try to always say yes because he does not ask for much. And so I
Right.
just, I think he's been very, very, very supportive. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I resonate a little bit with the not having a life. I live in a
Yeah.
small, kind of like more rural area here in
Yeah.
Minnesota, and I'm not originally from here, but I moved here for my day job, like
Hmm.
14 years ago now.
Hmm.
And I'd spent a lot of my life before that living coastally, but also internationally. Like I lived in Japan and Scotland for a
Hmm.
while, and just bigger cities and other countries. So it was a really hard transition moving
Yeah.
to rural Midwestern USA. And um,
Yeah.
as I had kind of talked about, I was on Kurt Grave and Maz Maddox's podcast recently, and we were kind of talking about stuff because they're in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I was just
Hmm.
sort of like, actually some of what I write in my books is reflective of probably like a longing for queer community that I don't really
Yeah.
have where I live.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some, but a lot of it is sadly like the students I teach. Like they're
Right.
19-year-olds,
Right.
they're not my age.
Right.
And so I miss that aspect of living in more urban
Hmm.
locations, but as a consequence, it's like, well, when I have free time, I'm usually at home and I'm reading or writing, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it does give me a lot of that opportunity. And so, I'm a little less like, I think, full introvert that like
Hmm.
some authors are. I definitely like
Hmm.
some of my alone time, but I'm also a bit more extroverted, and that's also kind of why I do the podcast because I'm like, oh, I want to talk to other
Yeah.
people who are doing this
Yeah.
because writing, and for people who are watching who might be aspiring writers and things like that, writing can sometimes feel very isolating or kind of lonely
Hmm.
and stuff. And it is really important to kind of create networks and get to know other people and learn from
Hmm.
them and help each other out in different ways. And so I hope that
Yeah.
people who are watching can also get ideas about that too. But yeah, no, but I relate. I relate
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, and I mean, to your point, I do think that I mean, it seems to me that if we want to, I guess we could say the MM community in particular is pretty welcoming and friendly and
Yes, it has been
supportive of each
delivering.
other.
Yeah.
And so people who are interested in queer fiction, even if they don't write MM, I think would find people who are excited to talk to them and talk about
Oh,
writing and
yeah.
talk about books. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, I will say I have heard, I'm not going to name any names or anything, but that, there are some other genres that are a little less friendly
Okay.
than
Yeah.
ours, but I
Yeah.
feel like the LGBTQ romance community has just been incredibly welcoming and
Hmm.
supportive, and
Hmm.
everyone I have ever kind of reached out to or spoken with has,
Hmm.
wanted to give back in some way of their
Hmm.
time, of their knowledge. And, I'm trying as a newer author now to kind of also do that for other people that I meet, new
Yeah,
folks too.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah,
because I think that that is part of what makes our community super special and
absolutely.
very, very sustaining, especially if you want to be in this for the long term, right?
Right. Right.
Uh, so, I mean, I guess this kind of begs the question, and I always talk with writers about this because I find it really interesting. Like, do you have aspirations of becoming a full-time author someday, or do you like having the balance of a day
Hmm.
job and the writing, structuring your time in particular ways?
Well, I mean, there's never enough time. So, I mean, I mean, I love my job and I find it very rewarding.
Mm,
I don't have any plans to not work.
right.
But I don't know either. I mean, life throws
Mm,
a lot of curveballs and
sure.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't
Mm,
know. I think if it came to that, it would be a hard choice. As much as I love writing, there's just a lot, as you said, it's solitary. There's
Hmm.
also a certain amount of like, I think, danger or precariousness to
Yes.
relying too much on that,
Oh, for sure. For income.
yeah. Well, and I think the psychological pressure of saying like to your creative
Yeah.
self, now you must create and you must create on a schedule and you must be successful every time
I
is a lot. And that's not a criticism of people who do it, and it's certainly not to say that you can't do it, but I think having watched a lot of people who have
right.
been very eager to be full-time authors and then who have struggled once they achieve it, I think
Yeah.
the dangers are real, you know?
Yes. Oh yeah. This is Jasper. He's decided
Hi,
he's gonna come and say
Jasper.
hi again
Hi,
here.
baby.
Yes. The
He
viewers
looks
know him.
happy.
Yes, yeah, oh,
Yeah.
he's very content. Yes. Anytime he's home
Yeah.
with me, it's like this is, dogs, I feel like they have simple wants and needs, really.
Yes.
Um, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. And I've certainly seen, I think that the market is so unpredictable, and I've seen some
Hmm.
authors who've gone full time who've then had to go back to like getting a
Yeah.
job. And um, I think that part of like sustainability is also maintaining joy
Yeah.
and joy in what you're doing, right?
Right.
And I think if you're constantly anxious about whether
Yeah.
your next release is going to be successful and you're going to be able to pay all your bills or not,
Right.
for me, I feel like that might really start to detract from the joy
Yeah.
component.
Yeah.
It would also like stop me from probably taking certain types of risks, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I can, if I were a person who could write completely to market, maybe that wouldn't matter, but that's not
Hmm.
really what I write.
Right.
To be a little quirkier, a little campier, a little off
Yeah.
out there in the stuff that I do. And so some stuff really hits, and then some stuff people are like, I don't know, So
Yeah. Well, and I also, when I think about people who go full time, I think, you know, you talked about you're a futurist,
mm,
what does that look like for you? What kind of sustainable writing life have you imagined for yourself for 20 years or 30 years or 50
right.
years? Because I
Hmm.
think often the thought is, well, I can make enough money this year on
Right.
KU, you know?
Right.
And so again, it's not really a criticism so much as I don't understand it, and
Mm,
I don't know. George Saunders says something about how, you know, kind of playfulness is one of the modes that we should bring to what we write. And I think that touches on what you said, right? Do you want to be churning out cogs? I mean, if you
right.
do, like, why don't you go churn out a cog that's going to make you more money in the first
Right.
place, right? There's a lot of places you can be a
Sure.
cog churner, So I don't know. I think, kind of like you, I don't have it in me to write cook the things that I guess that are trendy and kind of successful simply because they're trendy. And so
Hmm.
that's just not really, I guess that kind of approach isn't really interesting to me. Now, if
Right.
I hit it big, I'm not going to complain, right? If I hit it
No,
big and
no,
I
no,
have enough money to say,
no.
never mind, I won't complain.
Right, right. I mean, and I think it is its own unique and particular talent for people who can write really successful to market books. Like that
Mhm.
takes a level of its own level of skill, right?
Mhm.
To be able to do that. I think a lot of it kind of comes down to probably how your business brain and your creative brain compete with each
Mhm.
other, like who gets
Mhm.
to win out essentially.
Yeah.
And so at least for me right now, it's I started doing this because I needed the outlet, and
Yeah.
I wanted to have the fun that it gave me, and I wanted to get the kind of reader response that I get where people love my geeky sci-fi references, or they're
Right.
like, this is like my comfort book that I read all the time because it always makes me laugh,
Yeah.
like that. Like those are things that are really meaningful to me. I know they're not necessarily monetary value, but
Right.
um they have a different kind of emotional valence and value
Right.
for me. So I think those are sort of things that I think about with it. But I mean, I feel like there's so much that's still unknown about where the future of all of this is going to go now with
Yeah.
AI and with
Yeah.
trad publishing and self-publishing. So we'll have to see, but I don't think storytelling will ever go away. And my
Right.
big, dream is to see more people in our genre getting like Netflix deals and stuff
Oh
like that, where
yeah.
we
That'd be
start getting
wonderful.
televised adaptations. I mean, like,
Yeah.
something like your Hazard and Somerset series would be a great
No,
television
it'd be fun. That'd be
series,
great.
right? And I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like there are so many people writing stuff that could be so well suited to adapt to that, and I'm living.
Right.
I have every confidence it's going to happen at some point, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Well, and that may be a field where AI does, a service, as
Yeah,
production
it
costs
could.
drop drastically. But
Right.
that puts other careers at risk. So you never
It
want to
does.
wish, you never want to wish somebody away, but like
No.
I don't know. I mean, in the same way that I'm sure people would love to just have a robot churn out a sitcom,
Right,
So
right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the SAG after strike was,
yeah,
related to some of that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah. Well, I know it's a little late for me to be asking this, but so I usually invite my guests to bring a beverage along with them
Oh,
because this is tea and talk. And of course,
yes.
we just got talking and I sort of forgot about it. But
No,
uh,
that's all right.
today, because this is a Friday evening chat, and I just got a manuscript uploaded to Amazon. So I have a
Congrats.
very nice whiskey sour
Oh,
this evening that I'm
congrats.
enjoying. Yeah, well, thank you.
I
Yes.
love it. Well, I think we have releases one day after each other,
Yes, we do.
maybe.
Yes, yours is on the
Yeah.
29th. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you bring a beverage with you, or do you have a favorite?
Well, I have this is my Stanley full of water that I have.
Hydration.
Yeah, just my real beverage of choice is probably a Coke Zero, but it's a bit
Okay.
too late for
Yeah.
this guy. I would be up,
Caffeine. Yes, if you
yeah,
get up
I'd be
at
up too
5
late.
a.m., I'm sure.
Yeah, so yeah, but I do this is kind of my kids like to make fun of me because my students at school is what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah.
Because the Stanley is so trendy right now and what's an
Mm,
adult doing with one and
right. It's
yeah.
like,
So
the Stanley has been around a lot longer than you all have been even
well,
in this world, right? Like,
right. Right. I like to tell them I had it before it was cool, but they don't care. That
I
doesn't mean anything to them.
no, exactly.
Right.
Well, let me circle back to you mentioned your upcoming release, and I want to make sure that we have some time to talk about your
Yeah.
latest book. So it is called Mystery Magnet. Let me read the little copy for this. So, when Dashiell Dawson Dane, love that, moves across the country to a small seaside town called Hastings Rock, he has one goal: get away from his ex. Okay, two goals, because he wouldn't mind a little help from his new boss, celebrity mystery author Vivienne Carver. With Vivienne's mentorship, Dash is sure he can get over this blasted case of writer's block and start telling his own stories again. The only problem? Vivienne is murdered on Dash's first night at Hemlock House. And when police find a secret passage that connects Dash's bedroom to Vivienne's, they're sure they know who did it. Now Dash has to prove his innocence, and the only way to do it is to figure out who really killed Vivienne Carver. Ooh, so this sounds exciting. And I have to
Thank
ask, because
you.
I'm such a nerd, is he based off of Dashiell Hammett? Like, are you
Well, so I tried to pick, I went through like every Golden Age mystery author and Pulp Fiction
okay?
mystery author, and I just picked 3D names that I really like because I love Dashiell Hammett. And
Yes.
then now Dawson I just saw on the list somewhere, and Dane I
Mm,
just saw on the list somewhere, but Dashiell Hammett's just
mm.
so fantastic. And so
Iconic. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh wow.
So
Okay, I love it.
well,
Well, this is
thanks.
great. Is this going to be like a standalone, or is it the beginning of a new series?
Yeah, this is the beginning of a new series. So I did a Kickstarter for this last month. It's a cozy mystery series that's
Love it.
12 books long.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah,
Wow.
so it's gonna take kind of like talking about being future oriented. It's gonna take me into 2020, late 2025. And yeah, so it is based on the idea, you know, if you're I'm sure you're familiar with, I'm not sure everyone is familiar with Murder She Wrote with
Oh yeah.
yeah, Angela
Noel
Lansbury as
Lansbury. Yeah,
Jessica
yeah.
Fletcher. So
Yes.
what if this crime-solving author's past caught up with her, and so Vivienne is
Hmm.
a Jessica Fletcher whose past caught up with her.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah, you
yeah.
kind of wondered if that was ever going to happen.
Yeah, right. Somebody's gonna get mad at Jessica
Right.
eventually. So yeah, so it's been really fun to write. I've tried to sprinkle, you talked about how you like to put movie references. I've tried to sprinkle some Murder She Wrote references in. So Hastings Rock is from the title of one of her Jessica Fletcher's books, the fictional books that she has. There's 12 books, one for each of the seasons of Murder She Wrote. I
Oh,
mean, just
nice. I
silly
love it.
stuff like that. So yeah.
So now is poor Dashiell going to find a romantic interest in
Well,
Hastings Rock?
he will. He will,
Oh,
but I think my my readers will not be surprised to hear that it's a slow burn. uh so Dash does meet a another guy he's interested in, but it's not going to be a quick relationship. And part of that is, I have to be honest, part of that is because the nature of a cozy mystery is that your ability to, like, the highs and the lows have to be constrained, right?
right.
It can't get too intense in any direction. And so if they get together too soon, I've read a lot of
Yeah,
cozy mystery series where they struggle to have an
yeah,
interesting dynamic in that
yeah,
relationship.
right.
So that's part of it, and part of it is just that I like to do a slow burn. I mean, that's the other part of it. So, um,
I enjoy a good slow burn, and I think that's actually very common in the cozy subgenre of
mhm,
any kind of mystery, really. I've read some
mhm,
other ones that kind of have more of like a hetero romantic subthread, and they
right,
pull it out quite a bit through
yes,
different books. And it's really more of a subplot than the main plot, which makes
right,
it work,
yes,
right? So,
yeah,
um, yeah,
and
well,
same here, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think like this sounds really exciting. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of so you mentioned the sort of Murder She Wrote thing.
Mhm.
Was there anything else that inspired you to start this particular series?
I have long loved cozy mysteries on television, so like the Hallmark mysteries and the Murder She Wrote, of course.
Yeah.
Um, Even things like Psych and Monk, all these shows that are fairly gentle in terms of kind of,
Midsummer Murders. Yeah.
yeah, Midsummer Murder, right? All the BBC ones,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And kind of, I had tried a lot of times to get into cozy mystery novels, and I often found it difficult to enjoy them the same way that I enjoyed the shows. And
Hmm.
so a real turning point for me was kind of around the same time discovering Josh Lanyon's Murder at Pirates Cove, the Secrets and Scrabble
Yeah.
series, and then
Hmm.
also the Thursday Murder Club. And
Mm.
I just think both of those authors, Josh Lanyon and Richard Osman, have done kind of remarkable things with the cozy genre. and
Hmm.
making it feel relevant and uh, nuanced and thoughtful in a way that the genre has failed to be often.
Right.
So I kind of reading those was really both of those authors was really a spark for me to say, gosh, here's all the things I love that I could never find in the book. And I finally found them, here. So that
Right.
was really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think like for a number of us, I know this was a motivation for me too when I started writing was sometimes we want to write the books we want to read that somebody else
Absolutely.
isn't really writing
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
And so, well, okay, so I want to have you tell me a little bit more what you feel comfortable telling me here about Hastings Rock, this town that you
Oh,
have
yeah.
created. Because one of the fundamental things I feel like in a cozy mystery is like part of it is you want to keep returning to this like quirky
Yeah.
little town and the characters,
Yeah.
the shops, the restaurants, the history, the what
Hmm.
makes it kind of unique, right?
Hmm.
So, what kinds of things kind of characterize this particular seaside town?
Well, I think to speak to your point about why, what makes it cozy in the sense that we would want to come back to this place
Mhm.
is probably first and foremost his group of friends. So they call themselves the last picks because they were always the last picks in gym, always the last
Ah,
picks, for a class project, that kind of thing. And so they're a group of misfits, as you might imagine.
love it.
And so that's a big part of, I think the draw of these books, or at least what I hope will be the draw. It comes out on Monday, so I guess we'll see. I
Okay.
mean, yeah. And then, he lives in this old Victorian mansion that
Nice.
has all sorts of secret passages, and there's lots of fun little quirky things about the house. And then the town itself is like a seaside tourist town, and so you get some of the fun of I mean, I love the Oregon. This is set on the Oregon coast, which is one of my favorite places
Mm,
in the world. It's
beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like 60 degrees year
Right.
round. It's foggy, and you have those beautiful, like, temperate rainforests. And the town is like it's got this cute artisanal vibe. And so you've got all these quirky Oregonian artist folk, and so I
Right.
think it's a fun vibe. The seaside town is a common setting for cozy mysteries, but there aren't a
Yeah.
lot in the Pacific Northwest. And so it was fun to do
Hmm.
a lot of, usually they're like in New England, or they're in like Scotland or Ireland, and they're
Right. Right.
so it's been fun to kind of it's not breaking new ground by any means, but like to find something that's less well trod, maybe.
Mm, mm. Yeah, so okay, so you talked about doing a Kickstarter for this and everything. What was that kind of experience like, and how many of the books did you have written before you
Hmm.
started that whole
Yeah.
fundraising
I
process?
I'm not sure I know two or three. I'm not sure I know
Okay.
how many were written at that point, but it's good. So this is the second one I've done. I did one with my uh kind of big crossover series last year, and
Mm,
I have really enjoyed doing them because they let me offer a lot of things that wouldn't be feasible otherwise. So like
okay.
some swag, for
Yeah.
readers. um I do some writing classes, writing workshops through the Kickstarter that I probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Mm,
um and then for readers who are willing to do it, as because you can make a lot more percentage wise from Kickstarter than you do from Amazon or from another retailer. So I
right.
was able to offer them the books at a lower price
Mhm.
and then still make the same amount of money, and with the audio as well. And so they kind of get a deal for supporting me in
Yeah.
advance.
Yeah.
I get the advantage of having some support in upfront to do the audio and the production costs for the books. And I get to do some extra fun stuff. And
Yeah.
if you're not interested, then they always can just buy it the normal way, which is,
Right.
works out fine. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen quite a number of authors in kind of LGBTQ fiction broadly who have been doing
Hmm.
starters, a lot of
Hmm.
which have been quite successful. I know
Hmm.
um, Vaughn Cassidy, who has a mystery series as well, had a really successful one not that long ago. And I think I just saw one that Jordan Castillo Price did for
Yeah.
audio and stuff. And
Yeah.
so I've been watching a lot of that, and I find it really interesting. I feel a little intimidated by all of the level of minutia of detail that would go into
Mm,
planning
yeah.
a
Yeah.
Kickstarter
It is a
and like
lot of moving parts.
coordinating all the
Yeah.
tiers and fulfilling them all. And
Yeah.
I would probably lean a lot more toward the digital because I have found mailing physical stuff gets so complicated.
It does. Yeah.
Especially if you've
It
got
does.
international readers, which many of us
Yeah.
do these days. And it's like I would
Yeah.
love to be able to get them stuff, but shipping is just ridiculous and
It
outrageous.
is. Yeah,
And
it is.
and then even when that you send it, sometimes then they have to pay unexpected customs on it and like all
Right.
kinds.
I
Anyway,
know.
but yeah, I feel like I worry for myself that it would take away a lot of time I could have been writing, trying to coordinate it. Like, how did you sort
Right.
of balance the time in planning a Kickstarter and still being able to do your writing?
Well, fortunately, the first one was the hard one. The second
Okay.
one, it was much easier. It was really, there is some amount of work in like getting the art in advance because I wanted to have some custom art up for people,
Sure,
getting
yeah.
the map of the town done, writing
Right.
up the copy for the campaign.
Mhm.
But like in general, it was much less work because I kind of already knew what I wanted to do. I'd figured out what I didn't like from the first one.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, and I think one of the other things that's nice is that when you have a group of readers who are enthusiastic about your work, it's exciting for them also to kind of see this campaign, and it's exciting to share
I
it with other people. And
yeah.
so, in a way that self-publishing often isn't, you can kind of make an event out of it, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
it's something that gets to feel special. So like with both Kickstarters, I've offered exclusive art and short story collections that nobody will be able to buy anywhere else. And so people feel
Yeah.
like those people who really love um, that world or those characters are
Mm,
excited that they got something that,
yeah.
other readers won't get to have. And then I offered kind of like a second, like, so like this Kickstarter was you could get some of the other stuff from the first one if you missed it,
Oh,
because,
sure, sure.
it's not to lock anyone out or to punish anyone. It's just exciting to have something that is special.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think readers who are really committed value that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They and
Yeah.
they want certain collectible things and exclusive
Right.
things. And
Right.
I mean, I think that's just partly the nature of being a fan and what fan
Yeah.
is all
Yeah.
about, right?
Right.
But so this is really interesting to me. I mean, obviously there's a lot of conversations that are going on about right now, and partly, we were talking about market instability and uncertainty earlier, about
Yeah.
diversifying income and stuff for authors and making sure that
Right.
you're not completely wholly dependent on, one entity that
Right.
can be problematic and has lots of issues. And so,
Right.
like, have you also like, do you also have like any kind of a subscription service? Have you thought about doing that? Are you doing things
Yeah.
like direct sales on a website? Like, how are you
Yeah.
kind of conceiving of this in your own business model as you move forward?
Yeah. Yeah, so I do. I think I do all of that stuff. I have
Hmm.
a web store where people can buy direct. I have a patronage site, and I really have tried to make it clear to my readers that I am deeply grateful for any extra support they want to give me, and that's kind of how I've envisioned that site, but that
Yeah.
it is not meant to be in the way Ream is, like a Kindle Unlimited for my books, and it's not meant to be a replacement for, the books I put out traditionally. And so, it's been a great place for, again, to give people more of what they want, right? So, like, I do a lot of
Yeah.
I do serialized books there, for my readers, and I do exclusive short stories, and I do behind the scenes content. But, and people have been very good to me as well as in saying, hey, thanks for being clear. We still want to support you. And so that's awesome. Like
Yeah.
they've been very generous in that way. But
Right.
I'm also, it's only been going for 4 months, and so I'm
Ah, okay.
still kind of figuring out
That
what
makes sense. Yeah.
what this looks like and what I want it to be for them, and if they're satisfied with it, and if it's sustainable for me. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm not currently doing any kind of a subscription. I've thought about it and I'm kind of
Hmm.
like looking at different options and stuff. And I've had a lot of readers asking about it, but
Yeah.
it's also kind of like I don't want to just jump in there. I tend to
Right.
do my research first,
Yeah,
academic by
absolutely.
training, but so
Right.
that tends to be like my MO. Like I'm like, okay, I've got to research the options and stuff like that. Because I was
Yeah.
actually surprised in, I did some polling in my own reader group, but then I also attended like a webinar that only James had done
Yeah.
because she has a really successful
She does.
Patreon
Yeah.
and like it was quite fascinating because stuff that she said and what my readers had told me um like they lined up, but it wasn't what I was expecting.
So
I
what, yeah, can you say more? Yeah.
yeah, like I thought going in, I thought that what most people were signing up for a subscription for was
Mhm.
for the serialized content.
Right.
It's early access to chapters of
Right.
going stuff. And I think my reasoning behind that was like, oh, I bet this would appeal to
Hmm.
readers who are also big in the fanfic
Right.
community, right? Because that's how they're used to getting
Right.
serialized content chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
But overwhelmingly, people were kind of like indifferent about the serial
Yeah.
chapters. What they wanted were the bonus stories,
Hmm.
the extra epilogues, the mini
Hmm.
fics, and then
Yeah.
swag, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What they were much more interested in actually paying money to get every month. And like
Yeah.
I hear them said, "Oh yeah, I'm signed up for a number of subscriptions, and the authors do serialized stuff, but I don't read it. I wait until it comes out because I want
Yeah.
the whole thing."
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's really fascinating to kind of like learn what your consumer base actually does and does not want,
Right.
and
Right.
people make assumptions essentially is kind of what I've learned. So
Yeah.
but I mean, I think obviously we're going to continue to see a lot more authors go this route precisely because um, other publishing platforms are kind of they have risks and problems associated with them, and
Right.
that
Right.
readers are in some respects much more aware nowadays than I think they have been in the past. But
Hmm.
yeah, um, so, in talking about all of this, it immediately makes me wonder, with all the stuff you're doing, so you've got a subscription, you've got your online store, you're doing serial stuff, you're doing Kickstarters, you're writing all this stuff, and you have a day job. Do you have time to read? And if you do, like, what do you enjoy reading in your free time?
Yeah, I have to read. I can't. I mean, I don't know. I honestly can't imagine not reading. And when I hear authors say that they don't have time to read anymore, like it's a huge red flag
Mm,
for me because I just
yeah.
want to say, ooh, what? What a
Mm-hmm.
bold thing to say. I mean, so I right now I've been reading. I've been listening to a lot of cozy mysteries, of course, on audio
Ooh.
because when I drive to work, I listen to those,
Mm.
and then my reading has been kind of all over the place. I read a fair amount of um. Well, I shouldn't say fair amount. I have to read some YA for my day job, and
Sure,
then
sure.
I kind of read all over there, and then I read I tend to read all over the mystery genre. So like I've been reading a lot of Agatha Christie lately. Some of that is reread, some of it is for the first time.
Sure.
But like a Stephen King just snuck in there. Like it's just kind of I read some Garth Nix before that. It's just kind of like whatever. I'm usually on in a pattern for a while and then something will change and I'll grab something new and
Okay.
yeah. So what about you? What have you been reading?
Ah, I listen to a lot of audiobooks too, just because I spend a lot of time in front of screens. And
Hmm.
so, while I love ebooks, sometimes at the end of the day, my eyes are just too tired.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing that I like is audiobooks, like I can listen to them while I'm doing the dishes, walking my
Hmm.
dogs, like doing
Hmm.
laundry, like I can multitask with them.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I've been listening to Alice Winter's newest series, The Fanged Mistakes and something dates. I can't remember that. I'm horrible at remembering titles, but it's quite cute. It's like a vampire werewolf sort of fake boyfriends, real
Yeah.
boyfriends kind of story.
Yeah.
Paranormal rom-com-ish with some, darker undercurrents. That one's
Yeah.
been enjoyable. And but like book wise, I got back into I so when I was a lot younger, I lived in Japan for a while when I was in my early 20s, and I got really
Mm.
into like manga and anime and stuff like that. And for a few years I kind of got out of reading or watching any of that, and then I just had some kind of like impulse to like try something new out. And so I've been kind of reading a bunch of manga lately, and also I've started getting into, I know some people in the MM community have talked about this a little bit, but like what in Japan are called light novels,
Mm.
which are sort of like, I don't even know how I would describe them. They're kind of like very fast and easy to consume novels that
Hmm.
are often the source of inspiration for like particular animated series or
Okay.
manga adaptations. That the light novel series came first, and there are a number of publishers here who've started publishing them in English and stuff like that. So I've been reading a couple of different series associated with that, and like one of them is from this Chinese Danmei series, which is sort of like their version of like boys love
Hmm.
essentially, but
Hmm.
tends to be, obviously because of some of China's laws, more heavily censored. But there's a series called Heaven Official's Blessing, and it has an anime, and I watched the anime and I was like, oh my God, this is really good. And then I discovered it had like this light novel series that goes beyond that, and I was like, okay, I've got to check that out. And then apparently they're bringing out like a 50 plus episode live action, like
Wow.
the drama adaptation of it later this year.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
okay, so I'll be watching that as well. And so I've been kind of getting into some of the light novels.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it kind of, yeah, it varies in terms of like what I'm a mood reader. So it's
Yeah.
sort of like, what am I in the mood for right now? Uh,
Yeah.
and it can run the gamut. But
Yeah.
that's just what this moment is for me. Yeah, but I do think finding time for reading is more challenging since I started writing, that I
Hmm.
sometimes have to kind of, but I do try to balance it out because, in part, like I do think you have to continue to stay abreast of what's going on in the genres
Hmm.
you like to write in, but also just to keep sometimes that inspiration flowing, like seeing what other
Hmm.
people are doing. A lot of times I get ideas for things when I'm reading someone else's work,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and I'll think like, oh, this gives me a kernel of an idea. Like, what if, but like totally different, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then, it
Absolutely.
can lead you in a whole lot of different directions. And,
Yeah.
art in general is derivative by nature, right? So we're inspired constantly by stuff that has come before. And so, yeah, I mean, I always kind of worry about, like, for instance, students I teach sometimes who are like, oh, I want to write novels in this genre. And I'm like, oh, well, what do you like to read in the genre? Oh, well, I don't read, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So again, that red flag issue, I'm like, okay, so this is
Right.
going to be a real problem here in terms of
Yeah.
if you want to have success with this, because
Yeah.
you don't know what the genre conventions and reader expectations are.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But no, I mean, I think reading like is always a stress reliever for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, I enjoy a lot of like, my background is in film studies and stuff, so I also really enjoy multiple forms of media, and I consume that kind
Hmm.
of stuff too. But from an early age, reading was the first thing I really connected with,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
in terms of getting my own mind imagining other things.
Right. Right.
So. Yeah. Well, I know we are getting close to the end of our time here today. I usually like to ask authors a little bit toward the end if they can tell us or give us any sort of sneak peek into what else can we expect from you in the coming year, in
Yeah.
terms of like other books or audio, or even do you have any convention or live appearances planned? Things like that. What can you share with us?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. I will be at GRL this year, which is kind of in a suburb of Kansas City. And so I'll be there.
Okay.
And that's my only planned convention for the year.
Okay.
So it's really hard as I'm not, well, I guess it's probably different for you or maybe different for you, but when you're in a public school, it's very difficult to
Yes.
leave, during the school year. So that, I think I talked about how my writing schedule is kind of going to be about these cozies and for the
Yeah.
next year or so. But I do have some books that'll be coming out that I've already written, but they've been kind of working their way through my patronage platform. And so I'll
Mm.
have my first book that's really a romantic suspense instead of a mystery with a romance subplot. So that'll come out
Oh.
later this year. And then I'll have my first romance because it's just a romance. Nobody
Ooh.
dies, nobody gets shot, nobody goes to the hospital. Uh, so that'll be out later this year, and then I think kind of early next year I'll have another kind of standalone mystery that has gone through my patronage site. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to think, the my audio always comes out a little bit after
Okay.
my print books. I
Sure.
don't know if that's the same for you. But
No, not quite yet. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sort of doing them as I can afford to do them.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, mine always come out after. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like they're always, yeah. So there will be audio for all the cozies, but it's going to
Oh, nice.
be, at kind of whenever Blake Lockhart can record
Okay.
them, and yeah,
Oh,
so
nice. Oh, nice.
yeah.
Okay, well, I have to jump in because now I'm totally curious about
Yeah.
the romance, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
like we were talking about, I mean, a lot of your stuff, while it has romantic
Hmm.
elements or subplots, like it tends to be
Yeah.
firmly in other kind of genre classifications,
Right.
right? So, what kind of hint can you give us? Like, is this a contemporary romance?
Hmm.
Is it kind of on the lighter or the more serious side? And kind of what inspired you to write that finally?
Well, it is for people who have read my first Quarto series. I have a character named Augie, and his brother Fernando is a huge jerk, but he's a loving older brother jerk, and so he's kind of a fan favorite. And so Fur is going to have his a romance story where he meets someone.
Oh,
So it can be read as a standalone, but people who
okay.
know the characters will probably enjoy it more.
Hmm.
And I wanted to write a story for him because I really like him as a character. He's one of those like gifts of the muse or the subconscious, like something that I didn't plan for, but that I've just
Right.
loved. And you know what that is. I mean,
Yes. Yes. I mean, sometimes I think it's like I have a real problem with side characters who take on a life of their
yeah,
own. And then
yeah,
I'm like, well, shit, now they're gonna have a
yeah,
book. And of
yeah,
course, immediately I get questions like, when are they gonna have a book?
yeah,
The problem is I have too many side characters because
yeah.
and then I'm like, oh God, how long is this series going to be? It,
Yes,
'cause,
exactly.
yeah, it is challenging because I have learned, like I'm still learning so much because like I haven't even been fully published 2 years yet, but I'm learning in terms of my own kind of process and everything that I
Yeah.
really can't seem to write standalone.
Yeah. Look who you're talking
Everything
to. I
turns
get
into a
it.
series, right? And like a
Yeah.
lot of my author friends are in the same boat. I'm really good friends with Megan Maslow, who
Hmm.
I have known. We started going to GRL together when she was still a reader, like before she
Oh
became
yeah.
an author. We met there and became friends. And she's always been really encouraging and supportive. But like she has the same problem, and we talk about it regularly.
Yeah.
Like she'll be real determined. She'll say, "This time, this book is gonna be standalone." And then I read it and I'm like, no, it's not. You've got to write this guy's book now. She's like, damn
Yeah.
it. I mean, so I think it is a common problem for a lot of us. So
Yeah.
I really admire people who can write standalones.
Yeah.
I think it's actually like hard. It's the same idea for me as for like novellas. Like
Hmm.
I tend to write longer, and so I
Hmm.
struggle with the shorter
Hmm.
form, especially to do romance, to have an HEA in a
Yeah.
contracted like amount of
Yeah.
time. I feel like is really hard to make convincing and believable, and so I admire
Right.
people who can do that really well. Uh,
Right.
it's a challenge for me.
Oh, no, I agree. It is for me as well. Yeah. I mean, I'm always kind of looking for ways to try something new and to stretch
Hmm.
myself. And so, one of those was to write a romance, that
Yeah.
wasn't, and one is to write, here's the paperback of Mystery Magnet. It's about half the size of one of my normal, it's
Yeah.
50,000 words instead of
And
100,
cozies tend to be shorter. Yeah.
Yeah, and so kind of trying different things has for me been really important in kind of keeping the writing feeling vital and
Mm.
playful and enjoyable. And but like you said, it's hard. It's hard
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do things that don't come naturally to you. And
Oh, for
so,
sure. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I do think it is important to sometimes try to branch out of your comfort zone so you
Mm-hmm.
don't just kind of keep
Mm-hmm.
writing the same thing over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. And yeah, I mean, I like to challenge myself and, it keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm usually mostly just competing with myself, right? It's like how I tend to
Right.
look at this. It's like,
Right.
it's I'm like, well, how could I one up this in some interesting
Yeah.
way? And like,
Yeah.
so, I mean, again, a lot of this I think is mentality in terms of how you
Right.
come into this, because it has been interesting to me to I started kind of later in the game
Mm.
getting published. I have written off and on since I was like in fourth grade and writing like
Hmm.
Harry Brooks fan fiction essentially.
Yeah.
All the way to, much later, but I didn't actually publish anything until I was like in my early 40s. And
Hmm.
so, I took a while to do that. And I think, I had a lot of, well, I tried doing trad publishing
Hmm.
originally in the
Hmm.
early 2000s because that's the only kind of option there really was back then.
Right.
It didn't
Right.
really go anywhere, and I think it kind of undermined my confidence for a while and stuff like that.
Right.
But when I finally decided to do it and I saw so many people who were being successful self-publishing, I just decided like, you know, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go in it and I'm just gonna believe in what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
that's been important to the sustainability kind of quality. But I certainly know a lot of other people who struggle to not be negatively affected by things like reviews or
Right.
sales
Right.
or other things like that.
Right.
You know, I've talked to a lot of authors and I've, especially the authors I've talked to who've been doing this like 10 plus years, right?
Hmm.
It's interesting because I think a lot of them, they, really emphasize the most important thing is perseverance. The people who are
Hmm.
still around 10 plus years doing this are the people who can persevere over the
Right.
ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and that kind
Right.
of thing. And so
Right.
I think it's about a mentality of what is the long game. So being a
Right.
futurist helps me in that regard a little
Yeah.
bit. But I
Yeah.
think, this is being a writer is so much more of an emotional, like psychological game
Yeah.
than people I think sometimes assume when they get into it. And so how you psych yourself up for that and keep yourself on your track of where you want to be going is
Yeah.
it can be difficult. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I've completely like derailed us here.
No, this has
So
been
much
great.
fun chatting
Yeah,
with
it's
you,
been
Gregory.
wonderful.
This was great. I hope I'll get to see you in person at an event sometime in the
Yeah.
near future. But I will put information about Mystery Magnet coming out April 29th in the show notes, the link to buy, and all your social links and everything as well for viewers. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And to my viewers, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all again next month.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.